Somewhere in a testing yard that most people will never see, engineers have been quietly shrinking one of Toyota's most rugged ideas down to the size of a compact SUV. And what's stepping out from behind the canvas cover looks less like a truck and more like a folded-up cabin waiting to unfold. This is the Toyota WildForge Micro Camper 4x4, and if the early builder chatter circulating through overland forums holds up, it might be the smallest four-wheel drive home Toyota has ever put its badge on. Most tiny campers ask you to choose between going anywhere and living comfortably once you get there. This one is reportedly refusing to make that trade. Before we get into what's actually hiding inside a footprint this small, hit subscribe, because the next 30 minutes are going to change how you think about what small is even allowed to mean. And the one detail that has quietly obsessed every overlander who's seen early sketches of this thing isn't the size at all. It's what's supposedly bolted underneath it. That's coming. But first, let's actually look at what Toyota built. This is a story about freedom, the kind that fits in a parking spot. From the front, the WildForge doesn't try to hide what it's built on. The stance is planted wide, the wheel arches are flared just enough to clear knobby all-terrain tires without looking bolted on, and the grille sits high, a small but deliberate signal that this thing is meant to wade through water crossings, not just gravel driveways. Reports point to a raised air intake routed up along the A-pillar, the kind of detail you only add if you're genuinely expecting to submerge the front end at some point. Side on, the proportions get strange in a good way. The cab is stock length, barely modified, but the box behind it swells outward and upward into a squared-off living module that looks almost too tall for a vehicle this short. Composite panels, said to be a mix of aluminum-skinned insulation board over a tubular steel frame, replace the traditional truck bed entirely. There's no seam where truck ends and camper begins. It reads as one continuous shape, which is rarer than it sounds in this segment. Underneath, the running gear tells its own story. 32-inch all-terrain tires are said to wrap around beadlock-style wheels, with a full-length skid plate reportedly bolted from the front bumper all the way back to the rear differential. The kind of underbody protection usually reserved for vehicles built specifically for rock crawling rather than family camping. One honest observation worth flagging early. At a wheelbase this tight, that much overhang behind the rear axle is going to test departure angle, no matter how the suspension is tuned, and early test mule photos do show the rear bumper sitting closer to the ground than you'd expect on a vehicle wearing this badge. From the rear, the design turns almost architectural. A single slab door, hinged on the side rather than swinging up, opens onto integrated fold-down steps. Above it, a spare tire is mounted flush rather than hanging off a swing arm, keeping the departure angle from getting worse than it already is. The taillights are thin, horizontal strips, the kind of detail that looks like it belongs on something far more expensive. And underneath all of it, riding higher than the body lines suggest, sits a chassis detail nobody expected. But we're not ready to talk about that yet. Under the skin is where the rumors get specific enough to actually matter. Multiple sourcing threads point to a 2.4-liter turbocharged four-cylinder. The same family of engine reportedly being tuned for several of Toyota's upcoming mid-size applications, paired with a hybrid assist system pushing a combined output somewhere in the neighborhood of 260 horsepower, though that figure is still described internally as a target rather than a locked number. A 2-speed transfer case with a genuine low-range crawl gear is said to be standard, not optional, which would be unusual for a vehicle this compact. Ground clearance estimates circulating among suppliers land around 10.6 inches, with approach and departure angles tuned specifically around that rear overhang we flagged a moment ago. If those load-bearing numbers hold, and this is very much an if, total production could be limited by the sheer complexity of building a habitation box this size onto a 4x4 platform. Early supplier estimates, unconfirmed, suggest annual output in the low thousands rather than the tens of thousands typical of a mainstream compact truck. That would make it one of the rarer vehicles to ever carry a mainstream badge into a market this small. On pavement, the added mass of the living module sits noticeably high, and anyone expecting car-like body control on tight switchbacks is going to be disappointed. This is a vehicle built to crawl, not corner, and that trade-off is baked into the geometry, whether Toyota says so publicly or not. Fuel economy figures haven't been locked down publicly, but engineers close to the project have floated a combined estimate somewhere in the high 20s for miles per gallon on pavement, with an auxiliary fuel tank said to push total range past 500 miles between fill-ups. Numbers that, if accurate, would be unusually strong for a vehicle hauling this much structure. But off the pavement, on the terrain this thing was actually designed for, the story changes completely. Step through that side door, and the vehicle stops making sense in a good way. Looking at this, it feels like someone took a full-size cabin, folded it in half, and somehow forgot to remove any of the furniture. A slide-out dinette on the driver's side seats 2 comfortably, 3 if you know each other well, and converts flat within what's said to be under a minute. Cabinetry runs floor to ceiling in a matte walnut-toned laminate, chosen according to design notes that have leaked out, specifically because it doesn't show scuff marks the way gloss finishes do after a season of gravel roads. Overhead, a skylight panel above the dinette is reportedly tinted rather than curtained, letting light in during the day without turning the cabin into a greenhouse at noon. The galley sits just inside the door, compact but fully equipped. A 2-burner induction cooktop, a 12-volt compressor fridge-freezer combo said to hold close to 2.5 cubic feet, and a fold-out counter extension that reportedly adds nearly a foot of prep space once the vehicle is parked. None of it is oversized. All of it is reportedly built to work. Now here's where things get genuinely strange for a vehicle this size. Tucked behind a pocket door at the rear corner is a wet bath, toilet, shower, and a fold-flat sink basin, squeezed into a footprint barely wider than a standard airplane lavatory, and yet early mock-up photos show a full standing shower head rather than the handheld sprayer most microcampers settle for. It shouldn't fit. By every rule of packaging a vehicle this short, it shouldn't. And yet there it is. Climb the short ladder built into the cabinetry wall, and the sleeping loft opens up above the cab. A queen-size platform, reportedly rated for 2 adults up to a combined weight limit that suppliers haven't finalized, with just enough headroom to sit up but not stand. A screened vent panel above the mattress is designed to pull hot air out overnight without needing to run a fan continuously. Small detail, big difference at 3 in the morning in July. Here's the part almost nobody mentions when they talk about campers this size. It's not the square footage that gets you. It's the sequencing. Kitchen counter folds down to reveal storage. Dinette folds flat to become a second sleeping surface. The shower curtain doubles as a privacy wall for the bunk below. Every inch is doing at least 2 jobs. And once you notice that pattern, you start seeing it in vehicle after vehicle that gets this segment right, and in most that get it wrong. Sitting inside this one, fully assembled, closed up for the night, it stops feeling like a vehicle at all. It feels like a cabin that just happens to have an engine. Power for all of this comes from a rooftop solar array. Panels said to total somewhere around 400 watts, feeding a lithium battery bank that suppliers have pegged in early documentation at roughly 300 amp hours. Enough, in theory, to run the fridge, lighting, and water pump for several days, without needing to plug in or start the engine. A DC to DC charger reportedly tops the battery bank back up automatically anytime the vehicle is driven, which matters more than it sounds like it should, because most micro campers in this class still rely on the driver remembering to flip a manual switch. Freshwater capacity sits around 20 gallons, gray water roughly matching that figure. Small numbers on paper, but reportedly enough for 4 to 5 days of careful off-grid use for 2 people. Safety hasn't been an afterthought in the rush to fit everything else in. A reinforced roll structure is said to run through the habitation module itself, not just the cab, alongside a fire suppression unit mounted near the cooktop, a detail more commonly found in dedicated expedition trucks than in anything marketed toward first-time campers. Here's the insider detail that's been quietly circulating in supplier documentation and hasn't shown up in a single public teaser yet. The entire habitation module is said to be designed as a removable unit mounted to the frame rails rather than bonded to the cab, meaning in theory the box could be pulled off entirely and the chassis underneath used as a standard 4x4 pickup. If that's accurate, and multiple independent sourcing threads suggest it is, this wouldn't just be a camper. It would be a modular platform wearing a camper's clothes for its first public appearance. A digital control panel near the entry door is reportedly the single interface for battery level, water tank levels, and tire pressure monitoring. No phone app required, no subscription tier, just physical readouts you can check with the door open and a flashlight. Which raises an obvious question nobody outside a handful of suppliers has actually answered yet. If the whole module really does come off that easily, what does Toyota actually plan to sell you? The camper, or the chassis underneath it? Pricing is, unsurprisingly, the murkiest part of this entire story. Nothing has been confirmed by Toyota, and anyone telling you an exact number right now is guessing. That said, early dealer network chatter and parts supplier documentation point toward a starting estimate somewhere in the neighborhood of the mid-$60,000 range, climbing toward the low 80,000s for a fully optioned build with the extended solar package and off-road suspension upgrade. Take those numbers as a rough shape, not a promise. So who is this actually built for? Not the person chasing the biggest floor plan or the most square footage on wheels. This is built for the couple who wants to disappear down a fire road on a random Tuesday without towing anything behind them. It's built for the solo traveler who needs a real bathroom and a real bed, but refuses to drive something the size of a delivery truck to get it. It's built for retirees downsizing out of a 40-foot motorhome who still want to reach the trailhead, not just the campground next to the highway. It's built for remote workers who need 4 walls and a door that locks between video calls, and for national park travelers who'd rather fit in a standard parking spot than circle the lot looking for pull-through space. If any part of that describes you, or someone you know, that's exactly the conversation to start in the comments below. Because a vehicle built around a trade-off this specific isn't for everyone, and it was never trying to be. So here's the reveal, the part that ties everything back together. That rear overhang we questioned in the first few minutes, that ground clearance number that seemed almost too good for a vehicle this compact, that removable habitation module nobody was supposed to know about yet. None of it is separate. It's one design decision made over and over in service of a single idea. Build the smallest possible home that can still go absolutely anywhere. And if the rarity estimates circulating through supplier channels hold up, we could be looking at one of the lowest volume vehicles to ever wear a mainstream Toyota badge. Not because demand won't be there, but because building something this small, this capable, and this livable simply doesn't scale the way a normal truck does. The verdict for now has to come with an asterisk, because nothing here is officially confirmed. But if even half of what's circulating through builder forums and supplier leaks turns out to be accurate, the WildForge isn't just another entry in a crowded micro camper category. It's a genuine argument that the smallest footprint and the most capable chassis were never actually in conflict, that someone just hadn't tried hard enough to prove it yet. Sitting with everything we now know, laid out end to end, this stops looking like a compromise and starts looking like a preview of where compact off-grid travel is actually headed. What felt impossible for a vehicle this size a few years ago might simply be what the future of this category looks like now. So close this one out for us. Down in the comments, tell us honestly, is a footprint this small worth the trade-offs we walked through today? Or does a real off-grid rig need more room than this to actually work? And if you want to see how this compares once we get our hands on confirmed specs, that follow-up is already in motion. Subscribe, keep the notifications on, and we'll see you in the next one.